Boruto episode 24, Boruto and Sarada. I actually enjoyed this episode. I was surprised how much I actually ended up liking it because I was like, I know that this is going to end up being a filler episode. I was hoping, I'm always hoping, that every episode is going to lead finally into us just getting to the Boruto movie arc. But this is actually a pretty fun episode. I don't know why it entertained me so much. It was really simple, and I guess a big part of it is that it actually felt important, even though not much was really happening. It was one of those episodes where it's like, this is, especially, the 5 Kage summit element of the episode, this is an episode where it's like, this is some of the stuff we've been investigating. These are the big issues we've had recently within the village and outside of the village with the Shin stuff, and it's leading to this, this grand thing. Like, there's some greater threat than even Kaguya from another dimension, and the way that they kind of played around with that idea, introducing it to the other Kage, I thought it was really well done. Like, it reminded me of a lot of the intense moments from Shippuden in the original Naruto, where it's not necessarily the calm before the storm, but it's just that big moment where, like, everything is kind of coming out and people are giving their opinions, like, this is what we're dealing with right now. We have no idea what's coming next, but it's something that is, far worse than anything we've ever dealt with. They talk about the actual state of the villages and stuff, and when they get to the fact that the kids, the current generation of children, probably won't be able to stand up to a threat that's even stronger than Kaguya. But they had a great moment there where they talk about, like, this is why they don't think that way, because, the reason we grew up so tough was because all of our villages were, like, at war most of the time, and eventually we all came together as, the allied forces, and that's how we ended up surviving. But now that everything's peaceful, it's basically that peace created weakness. That's kind of what they talk about, and they even mention Shin, where it's like, that constant war allowing for literally the survival of the fittest. And I thought that was just a really cool concept for them to go through, where it's like, things are so incredibly different now. We don't, we still train kids, but, and I've referenced this before when the series kind of first kicked off, it's very different than it was in the original series. They would always talk about, like, oh yes, of course you have tests and things like that, but it was definitely more strict when it came to, it was mostly ninjutsu based. And I just thought that was really cool. And it was like, you could definitely see that in the series, and they talk about that and how the world is very different. It's so calm. They aren't as, as forceful with some of the skills that the kids need to have, because it's like, well, we're not going to be fighting, the village hidden in the mist. We aren't going to be fighting the sand village. So, it's not that big of a deal. Like, there might be rogue ninja out there every once in a while, just random bad people. But it's not like it was before, where it's like, oh, we ran into, any shinobi from any other village, and now it's a battle, against who knows, how skilled this opponent is going to end up being. So it was a very interesting concept. And then I thought it was really cool that, Gaara and Naruto kind of had their little connection, because it's like, well, I know you guys might think that way, but we kind of, went through that as well. Like, when you say Naruto, and I thought that was a really cool moment, because it was like, no one thought anything of us. We were literally like the monsters who were, like, cast out from the rest of our people, even though we were kind of stuck in our own village. And I thought that was just a really good point. It was like, there'll be nothing more than monsters and, curses upon their villages, and they're, like, some of the strongest ninja. And I just thought that was a really cool way to kind of bring it back around to, like, these kids will grow up. Like, there may not be the concept of you have to be strong because of every other village is going to, being strong. It's just the fact that people grow up and they train, they fight with friends, they just hone their skills through all sorts of natural situations. And of course that ties into the main story of this episode, which is Boruto and Sarada. And Sarada wanting to become Hokage, and Boruto possibly wanting to become Hokage, which I kind of like the fact that they sort of put that in there with Konohamaru, where he's like, I was the grandson of the third Hokage, so I kind of understand just being set as this child. Like, if I remember, he was always called, like, the honorable grandson, if I remember right. So it was like, I know what that's like. And he's like, he says he doesn't want to be Hokage, but it's like, I kind of wonder about that. So I thought that was cool. They kind of have a reference to the original series with Konohamaru taking Naruto's place, where he's like, oh, Sarada, you want to be Hokage? Excuse me, you want to be Hokage, and so do I, so I guess that makes us rivals. And I thought that was pretty cool, because I was like, oh, that's cool. He's kind of, taking Naruto's place now, where he's the elder of the pairing, or two pairings, if you count him and Boruto as well. And I just thought that was a cool little moment, but it was actually a pretty decent episode. Sarada, of course, is focusing on, her Sharingan and trying to figured that out. She went through and got some of the basics from Konohamaru, and it's like, oh, that's why I was about to pass out, because she's just now using the technique. So that was definitely cool, and she's used the Shadow Clone Jutsu, so she actually copied it. I was like, that's cool, because we never actually see that. The only person we ever really see use the Sharingan as like a copy ninjutsu was, of course, Kakashi. That was like his whole thing. But for everybody else, it was always just like, well, eventually, of course, it built up to like Amaterasu and all that stuff. But like for Sasuke, it was always just the visual thing where it's like, all right, I know what's going to happen next, and he would just dodge. He rarely ever like actually copied anyone else's moves. That was always like Kakashi's thing. And then Sasuke just used it for the visual aspect, and he was just good, so he didn't really have to copy people very often. So it was just kind of cool to be like, okay, we actually get to go back to really what were the basics of the Sharingan, which is the fact that you can basically see the future. I mean, that's pretty much what it is, like seeing where someone's about to hit before they do it. Even though they just say it's just, being able to see. But, it went to that, and then her copying Boruto's ability from the beginning of the episode. I thought that was really cool. I was like, that's actually pretty sweet. Like, she picked that up when he did it in the very beginning of the episode, and then she did it to use, like, one shadow clone. And I just thought, like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's not something that, she really practices with, but she has enough skill to at least pull off one. And I thought that was nice, and she uses that towards the end as well. And I thought that was a nice way to kind of show that off. Like, she doesn't do as many as Boruto does, but she does pull off the one, and she does it during her fight with Chocho, and she does the same thing when she goes against Boruto at the end, and it's just one shadow clone for her. So I was like, that's actually kind of cool, because she's combining using this ability she's unfamiliar with the Sharingan, which she's also unfamiliar with. And I was like, that's a cool way to do that. So we get to see that copy ability, we get to see the visual prowess of, seeing the motions of, the action that's about to occur in front of you. So I was like, that's cool. They kind of took it back to basics for her. And I would love to see that build up. I would love to see that be her thing, where she kind of combines the elements of, what Sasuke used to do, which was just the visual element of seeing what's going to happen right in front of you. And then the copy elements, at least, like a nice balance of that, I think would be great to see for her character. But I'm sure at some point there would be some new random visual jutsu that we've never seen before with the Sharingan. I don't know. I'm not reading the manga, but it's just Sharingan, so they always, even though it's not supposed to be as strong as the Byakugan, it's got 800 million possibilities, so I'm sure she'll have something brand new at some point in the future. It might be way down the line, but I wouldn't be surprised. But it would be cool if she only stuck with the regular Sharingan and just utilized that to its fullest potential, kind of like Kakashi did. I think that would be great. I think that would just be really cool to see. But it was fun. I liked the fight that they had at the end. It was very simple. Just a simple little battle, and it, like I said, coincided with Naruto saying, like, I know everyone seems like, the kids seem like they might not be up to snuff, but when the time comes, they will be. Like, they will ultimately end up surpassing us, and they go through all the kids, and Iwabe and Metal were arguing the whole episode about which of the five Kage were strongest and stuff, so they cut to them, and Denki has to, like, grab his laptop real fast because Iwabe crushed the table. They have, like, the Inoshika Cho trio going up against Choji, which I thought was pretty cool. Even though we don't actually see Shikadai, I just assume that it was all three of them there training. But I thought that was pretty cool. So they show the different kids, and then of course Boruto and Sarada are actually having their battle and using like their signature moves. So I was like, this is actually kind of cool. It's, all the Kage coming together. It's that idea of, this big thing happening, even though I know what the big thing is, because I'm assuming it's just going to lead to the Boruto movie. But still, it was like the way they're doing it in the element and the seriousness of it actually felt important, and it's like, man, this actually felt good. Even though there wasn't a huge thing that happened, it didn't feel like it was just another filler episode. It was something that's truly taking the next step towards, where we're headed with the series, with, this next giant threat that's coming along, and then just Boruto and Sadara's characters in general, and them, building up into the future of who they want to be as, part of the village or just on their own. So I thought it was a cool episode. Of course, one of the funniest parts of the episode was definitely the 5 Kage Summit kicking off, and everybody had like their super epic intros. Dowdy comes in as a lightning bolt. He just drops down. It's like, boom, we're here. Everybody, people coming in and mist and shooting out of the ground and stuff. It was just really funny the way they did that, because I'm like, that was just so flashy. They didn't need to do any of that stuff, but that was pretty funny. Plus, they went through and it was basically like greatest hits sort of thing, because these, of course, if you are not familiar with Naruto Shippuden, these of course are characters that we've seen before, and they've all rise to the ranks, and odds are most people knew this if you're either reading the manga or if you saw the movie. They'll show up during that arc as well, during the tuning exams. So it was like, all right, that's cool, to see them. And this, I think, was definitely, it was very clear what it was, because when everyone showed up, it was like, all right, so for everyone who might be too young to have actually watched like Naruto Shippuden, and like for whatever reason you're just now jumping on Boruto, they clearly did that to be like, this character is this, and they even reference lines and stuff like the Raikage saying to Darui, like, I don't need a left hand if I have a right hand as good as you. And I was like, okay, they actually reference specific lines, and they talk about some of the like greatest hits, the biggest moments that some of these characters have had, and it was really cool. And I love the part with the guard. That was probably my favorite one, because Iwabe and Metal started crying. They're like, it's such a waste that he's actually Shikadai's uncle and stuff, and I just thought that was really funny. But I thought that was a cool little intro. We got to see Kankuro. I wish they did a close up on Kankuro. I love like current Kankuro, like his outfit with the mask and stuff. I think he looks the coolest he's ever looked before. I think that's actually like the coolest outfit they've ever given Kankuro. So I kind of wish we got to see him just a little bit more. But it was cool. We got to see everybody come in. A lot of the characters who were, the right hand of all the different Kage, of course, were their, their allies and stuff. None of them I actually remember. I suck at names in general. Typically, I remember most people from Naruto, but the people from the other villages, I just cannot remember. I remember Darui and, like, of course, Killer Bee and Raikage, and that's just what they called him. But I really can't remember, like, any of the other characters. Like, I remember the one dude who was with Darui, and, because he is... I don't know if they were actually brother and sister. They were just always together. I think they were just friends. But he is the friend of Choji's wife with the red hair, who we haven't actually seen in anime form yet. But Chocho's mom was always like teamed up with him, like all the time. They were fighting together because he always had a katana, and I think she did too, or she had something. But they were always like the two characters that were together all the time. They were like a cool little duo. But I was like, that's cool. He almost looked exactly the same age, which was really weird. Like, everyone actually looked older except for him to me. I was like, he still looks exactly the same. Like, I felt like they didn't change him enough, because his outfit was exactly the same. Like, he just looked so similar. It was kind of funny to me. It's like, he literally did not age compared to everybody else. But it was definitely cool to see all the other characters. And like I said, the flashy intros and stuff, and them going through like the greatest hits moments. Like, this is this character, and this is what they did. And this person was like has one of the legendary seven swordsmen and all that stuff, and it was like definitely greatest hits where like just recap stuff for people who may have forgotten, or people who are just jumping onto like this series. It's like, all right, if you started with Boruto, here's exactly who they are. Here's some of the greatest things that they've done within the Naruto universe, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And I didn't hate it because I love the silly flashy intros, because they were so over the top. Like, none of them needed to show up like that, but they did, and it was just like a huge, like, epic spectacle. So I love that. But ultimately, it was a really good episode. I was surprised how much I really enjoyed it. Like, the level of seriousness actually felt like it had an impact, even though I know, ultimately what the story's leading to. It still felt really good. I was like, this feels like a great impact. It was a 5 Kage summit, and it had the actual emotion that should be surrounded by that. Like, it was a serious issue. It was about what's happening next, and it's about what may or may not be capable of the future generation, and we get to see a little bit of that, mostly through Boruto and Sarada, but the other kids as well. We get glimpses of that at the end, which I just thought ultimately was really well done. Next week's episode is going to be straight filler, unfortunately, so we'll see how that plays out. But they are going somewhere different, so I am excited for that, at least because we get to see visually. I want to say it was the Hit and Miss Village. I believe that's where they're headed. So in one regard, it's filler, so I'm just like, and there could be something relevant. I just kind of doubt it. But even with it being filler, on the other end of it, they're going to another village, and that could lead to a lot of cool possibilities, and we get some new characters. Probably, filler characters, so they won't matter. But one of the characters definitely looked like one of the Jubi from Shippuden. He looked like the guy who had the staff. I think he's the third... I can't remember what village he was from, but like it looked just like him. It looked like really close to him. Like, he had the hair, and he had like the little scar and stuff with the crazy eyes. And I know it's not that character, but I'm like, I feel like that design is based off of the Jubi, who was like I want to say he was like for the third creature. He was like the original third Kyuubi. I just can't really remember. I wish I could remember. I know what he looks like. I just can't remember what creature he was, or what number, or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it was the third monster, the Three Tails, but that's all I can really remember. So maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but it looked just like that guy for sure. But I am excited for it, at least a little bit, because of them going to another village. Outside of that, I don't really know. I'm not sure how much I really care for it. I think Nanki was there. I believe Shikadai, naturally Boruto. Um, I want to say Inojin was in there somewhere during the promo, and of course we see Aruka during like one section, which is probably before they take off on their trip. It's supposed to be a class trip, but they only show like the boys, so I'm like, is it actually a class trip or is it just like here's a random special assignment for these specific characters? So we'll have to see if everyone's actually there, because they say it's like a class trip in the promo a couple of times, but they only show like 3 of the characters. So I'm like, I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see next week. But ultimately, I actually had a really good time with this episode, a surprisingly good time, as far as I'm concerned. But I would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know what you guys felt about this episode, because I thought for sure going into it, it was going to be a filler, and it kind of flipped the script on me. I thought it was just going to be Boruto and Sarada, and it's like, yeah, it's them kind of competing, but ultimately that doesn't need to have its own episode, because that can almost be like a part of the actual series, which it pretty much is. So I was kind of worried, like that's just going to be sort of, here's a whole episode devoted to just this, and it won't actually add that much to the characters, because they've already kind of been rivals, even though it hasn't shown up as, predominantly as it will, from here on out. But I was very happy with this one, so I would love to know how you guys felt after the end of this episode, as far as going into future arcs, and them just kind of having the emotional impact that they had in this episode about things being serious and what the future holds for this series. So please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.